Throughout her talk, Professor Dajani uses verses from the Quran to explain and to illustrate the theory of evolution. Now, when talking about the reason why Islam clashed historically with Darwinism, Professor Dajani said that in the beginning, many of Islam's own scientists actually had rudimentary theories about evolutions, and that after Darwinism, a lot of other Islamic scientists actually did kind of agree with it. During these times, education was not offered to many people, and additionally, it was the end of the Ottoman Empire, so there were very little scientists. So the Muslim scientists who had read about the Darwin theory saw that many other Christian scientists were very much against it, and they thought that, as Professor said, and I quote, they were people of the book. They must have had the same reasons to disagree. So the Muslim scientific society just followed the Christians' point of view and disagreed with Darwinism without consulting with other Muslim peers. Professor Dajani also says that the Quran is not a book of final facts. In fact, it only gives us guidelines and advice on how to think. She also mentioned that the Quran talks about the scientific method on how to think about scientific facts. So additionally, Professor Dajani also talks about how the actual point of view of Islam is not completely contradictory to Darwin's theory, as she cited many verses from which, for example, people would say that إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, which would mean that we have created humans in the best form possible. However, Professor Dajani says that it is not the best form possible, but it could be interpreted as the most fit, as in the most fit to the current situation, the environment the humans are living in the time being. Many people also disagree with the theory of evolution, saying that the humans were created in that instinctively, in instant T. However, the Quran also says, according to Professor Dajani, that the stars and the moon and the sun took billions of years to complete their creation. So why wouldn't that be okay for humans? Especially that, according to her, once again, Darwin's theory does not talk about the creation of a certain species, for instance, human, but more about the mechanism of evolution. So in her talk, Professor Dajani mentions that it is okay to make mistakes, as the Quran only gives us guidelines on how to scientifically think. It is actually open to interpretations, which she called ijtihad, as in it is called ijtihad in the Islamic community or Islamic scientific society. Now she says that the diversity of point of views would only create more ways of seeing things. So after reading Professor Dawkins' interview, I have noticed that he would generally agree with Professor Dajani's point of view when it is about focusing on scientific evidence rather than just what religion would say. As he says, and I quote, people should put their trust in evidence, not in faith, revelation, tradition, or authority. He also says that people need, and I quote, they need to understand what evolution is about. As Professor Dajani also says in her speech, in her talk, that most people didn't actually read the book of evolution of Darwin, rather just know kind of what the idea would be about from someone and someone and someone and someone. However, where the Professor Dajani and Professor Dawkins' point of view differ is from the creation of the universe, the beginning of the universe. Professor Dajani, as a Muslim, believes that it is God who is the beginning of the universe. However, Professor Dawkins actually says that it is not possible. So Professor Dawkins states, and I quote, "It doesn't explain where the creator comes from," which means that, and as he says, an organ being so complicated to have evoluted is not, should also have been very complicated to create, which means that the creator itself is a very important piece of the puzzle that we need to know about. Else, just saying that it comes from God is not very scientific. Now to talk about the Saudi and Iranian education systems. The Saudi education system is based on what a committee chooses, and this committee is led by the king himself, who has no scientific background. It is also their science book are mostly based, not even mostly, are completely based on Islamic Quranic verses for every little thing. So for example, the article says that when they were talking about the creation of humans, they just said that it was created in the best form possible, without even mentioning any scientific fact. Additionally, the Saudi books would bash evolutionarism and say that it is al-kufr, which means be something against the religion. And as it is solely based on Quranic verse, the Saudi educational system and the Saudi books have no data, no scientific laws, and no scientific explanations to the world around us. However, even if the Iran is a very Muslim country who obeys to the Sharia as like Muslim law as its main law, their educational point of view is very different. Their books are decided by the Education Ministry, which is not comprised, as they said, of religious people, as in religious figures, but is still dictated by the authority of the religious country. However, the Iranian educational system does consider science as its own field, and it is not solely based off of Islam. They actually do have scientific laws and data. So the Iranian educational system, the Iranian books, actually do mention evolution. For example, in geology, as the article said, when they are talking about fossils and their mutations. They even actually acknowledge Darwin's theory. They talk about it. They talk about proof of Darwin's theory, proof of evolution, when they also are talking about embryology. So we can see the difference between the Saudi and Iranian educational systems, where the Saudi system is solely based on the Quran and has no actual scientific methodology or scientific information, while the Iranian educational system actually is comprised of scientific law, scientific data, and explores science without bashing or insulting any point of view.